What is the New York City GMVA's look-back window, and why does the July 2027 deadline matter? Attorney Andrew M. Stengel. If you've been following news about sexual assault civil litigation in New York, you've heard the phrase look back window. That term appears in coverage of the Child Victims Act, the Adult Survivors Act, and now the New York City Gender-Motivated Violence Act. But what does the GMVA's look back window actually mean? And why is the July 29th, 2027 deadline so significant? Statutes of limitations, the normal rule in New York. In ordinary civil litigation, every claim must be filed within a set period of time after the harmful event occurs. This is called the statute of limitations. For personal injury claims in New York, the standard period for a claim for negligence is 3 years. For medical malpractice, it's 2.5 years. These deadlines exist in theory because memories fade, witnesses become unavailable, and evidence degrades over time. The practical effect for sexual assault survivors was often devastating. A survivor who was abused as a child might not come to terms with what happened until their 30s or 40s. By that time, a claim is usually time barred. A survivor who was abused in an institutional setting might not learn until years later that they were not the only victim, that the institution knew, or that litigation was even possible. What the GMVA's look-back window does? A look-back window is a legislatively created exception to the statute of limitations. During GMVA's look-back window, survivors can file civil claims for abuse that occurred at any time in the past, regardless of when the normal limitations period would have expired. The window is temporary, thus it is open for a defined period, and when it closes, the exception is gone. New York has used this mechanism several times in recent years. Child Victims Act, 2019, created a window for childhood sexual abuse survivors statewide, ultimately extended and closed. Adult Survivors Act, 2022, created a 1-year window for adult sexual assault survivors statewide, closed November to 2023. New York City, GMVA Look Back Window, 2023 to 2025. First GMVA Look Back Window, closed March 2025, with subsequent court rulings limiting its retroactive reach. New York City GMVA Look Back Window, Section 10-1104.1, 2026 to 2027. The current and final window, open January 29th, 2026 through July 29th, 2027. Why the legislature uses look-back windows. Lawmakers who study sexual abuse understand something that traditional limitations doctrine ignored. Trauma does not follow a predictable timeline. The psychological mechanisms that cause survivors to delay disclosure, dissociation, self-blame, fear of the abuser, distrust of authority, and the neurological effects of trauma itself are well documented. Trauma experts have testified extensively in legislative hearings about why survivors often cannot come forward within standard limitations periods. Look-back windows represent a legislative acknowledgement of these realities, and they are an admission that prior law was unjust and a correction of that injustice within a defined temporary time frame. Why this is likely the final GMVA look-back window. The New York City GMVA has now created 2 look-back windows, the 2023 to 2025 window and the current 2026 to 2027 window. The second GMVA look-back window was necessary specifically because a court ruling limited the retroactive reach of the first. It was passed over a mayoral veto. Securing the override required significant political effort by survivors' advocates and council members. There is no indication that a third window will be created. In fact, the legislative record strongly suggests that legislators understood this was a final opportunity. The 18-month duration, the explicit language allowing refilling of dismissed claims, and the override of the mayoral veto all reflect the council's intent that this window be comprehensive and conclusive. What this means for sexual assault survivors in New York City. If you are a survivor of sexual assault or gender-motivated violence in New York City and your abuse occurred before January 9th, 2022, the July 29th, 2027, Deadline is the most important date in your potential legal case. Therefore, missing it means missing the window permanently, which is why it is urgent to speak to a New York sexual assault lawyer. Do not assume you have plenty of time. Civil litigation, especially against institutional defendants, requires investigation, preservation of evidence, identification of witnesses, and strategic preparation. Contact us now for a consultation. Cases filed close to the deadline with inadequate preparation are weaker cases. Early consultation with a qualified attorney gives your case the foundation it needs. The window closes July 29th, 2027. This is not a soft deadline or a guideline. It is a legal cutoff. Call us today for a free confidential consultation. Schedule a consultation with us by emailing info@stengellaw.com. For more information, please visit our website, stengellaw.com. Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome.